My name is Joanna, and I am 32 years old. I was adopted when I was 8 after spending my early childhood in an unstable home with my biological mother and 2 sisters. For years, I built a happy life with my adoptive parents, who gave me stability, love, and support. Then, out of nowhere, after 25 years of silence, my biological mother reached out through Facebook claiming she and my sisters wanted to reconnect. What started as a hopeful reunion quickly revealed their true intentions. I had to make the hardest decision of my life. Let me tell you where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members. Your support helps me share more stories like this one. I have scattered memories of my early life with my biological family. We lived in a small, cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper and the constant smell of cigarette smoke. My biological mother, Diane, struggled to keep jobs, and we moved frequently whenever rent became too much. My biological sisters, Tara and Ashley, were 3 and 4 years older than me. We shared a mattress on the floor of what should have been our bedroom, but often doubled as storage for whatever items my mother collected. My father was never in the picture. According to my mother, he left before I was born, and she would alternate between cursing his name and crying about how much she missed him. Looking back, I realize she likely had addiction issues, though. As a child, I just knew she was unpredictable. Some days she would be loving and attentive, making pancakes shaped like animals and telling us stories. Other days she would stay in bed until evening, leaving Tara to get us ready for school and prepare our meals, which usually consisted of cereal or peanut butter sandwiches. Food was often scarce in our home. I remember the heavy feeling in my stomach when I would open the refrigerator to find only condiments and a half-gallon of milk. Tara became skilled at stretching what little we had watering down soup and dividing a single packet of ramen noodles between the 3 of us. During this time, my sisters became my protectors. They would save portions of their school lunches for me, and Tara would sing me to sleep when I cried from hunger. When I was 5, social services became involved after my kindergarten teacher noticed bruises on my arms and my constant hunger. I remember men and women in professional clothes coming to our apartment asking questions and taking notes. They spoke to each of us individually. I was scared and confused, unsure what to say. I loved my mother despite everything, and I had been taught not to talk to strangers about our home life. We were temporarily placed in emergency foster care for 2 weeks. I remember crying for my mother and sisters every night. When we were returned home, things improved briefly. Our apartment was clean, the refrigerator stocked, and my mother seemed more present. She attended parenting classes and met regularly with a social worker. But within months, the pattern returned. New boyfriends started staying over some kind, and others intimidating. The food dwindled, and my mother's attentiveness waned. The final incident happened when I was 7. My mother had been dating a man named Troy for several months. He seemed nice at first, bringing us small gifts and taking us for ice cream. But he had a temper that emerged when he drank, which became more frequent. One night I woke to shouting. Troy was yelling at my mother, accusing her of spending money meant for rent on something else. When Tara tried to intervene, he pushed her against the wall. I remember her small body crumpling to the floor and the terror that seized me. Ashley grabbed my hand and pulled me into the bathroom, where we locked the door and huddled in the bathtub, hands over our ears. The neighbors called the police. When they arrived, Troy was gone, but the apartment was in chaos. Broken dishes littered the floor, and my mother had a cut on her forehead. Tara was still crying, and Ashley and I remained frozen in the bathtub until a female officer gently coaxed us out. That night, we were taken into custody again, but this time the separation became permanent. My heart broke further when my sisters and I were separated. They were placed together in a foster home across town, while I was sent to a different one. The social workers explained that the other home only had space for 2 children, and they thought it best to keep the older girls together. I remember screaming and clinging to Tara as they pulled us apart, begging them not to take my sisters away. That night, in a strange bed with unfamiliar smells, I cried until I had no tears left. During the first few months, we had supervised visits at the social services office. My mother would sometimes show up promising she was getting things together, that she would fight to get us back. She brought small gifts she could not afford and hugged us with desperate intensity. But as months passed, her attendance became sporadic. She would miss visits without calling, leaving us waiting in the sterile visitation room with board games and donated toys. Each missed visit felt like another abandonment. I remember the last time I saw her before the long gap. She arrived late, looking tired and thin. She hugged each of us and promised to see us the following week. She never showed up for that visit or any thereafter. My sisters and I continued our monthly meetings, though they became harder as we grew more distant, developing separate lives in our different foster homes. Eventually, even those visits became less frequent as their foster family moved further away. The last time I saw them, I was nearly 8. Tara gave me her favorite hair clip, a small butterfly with blue rhinestones, and told me to be brave. Ashley hugged me so tight I could hardly breathe, whispering that they would find me again someday. For months afterward, I would ask my social worker when I would see my sisters or mother again. The answers became increasingly vague, and eventually I stopped asking. The butterfly hair clip became my most treasured possession, a tangible reminder that I once belonged to someone. I wore it until it broke, then kept the pieces wrapped in tissue paper under my pillow, taking them out at night to remind myself that somewhere I had sisters who loved me. Everything changed when I met Michael and Sarah Thompson. I was 8 years old and had been in the foster system for over a year, moving between 2 different homes. My social worker, Ms. Garcia, told me we were meeting a couple who wanted to get to know me. I remember feeling both hopeful and terrified. Previous meetings with potential adoptive parents had not gone well. One couple seemed disappointed that I was so quiet, and another changed their minds after learning about my background. The Thompsons were different from the moment I met them. Sarah had a gentle smile that reached her eyes, and Michael knelt down to my level when he introduced himself. They brought a small gift, a book about a girl who went on adventures with her teddy bear. Sarah mentioned she loved reading and would be happy to read with me if I wanted. There was no pressure, just warmth. During our initial meetings, I remained guarded. I answered their questions with minimal words and refused to show excitement about the toys they brought or the activities they suggested. I had learned that getting attached only led to heartbreak. But they were patient, showing up consistently for our scheduled visits, always bringing small, thoughtful gifts that showed they were paying attention to my interests. After several months of visits, Ms. Garcia told me the Thompsons wanted to become my permanent family. I would move into their home, and if everything went well, they would adopt me legally. I remember asking if my biological mother knew and if there was any chance I might go back to her or my sisters. Ms. Garcia explained gently that my mother had not completed the necessary steps to regain custody, and that this was my chance for a stable, permanent home. Moving in with the Thompsons meant relocating to a suburban neighborhood 20 miles from my foster home. Their house was modest but comfortable, with a yard and a tree swing. Sarah had prepared a room for me with a purple bedspread because she remembered I mentioned liking purple once. There was a bookshelf with various children's books and a small desk by the window. On the bed sat a teddy bear wearing a t-shirt with my name on it. I hugged it to my chest that first night as tears silently streamed down my face, torn between hope for this new beginning and grief for all I had lost. The first few months were challenging. I had terrible nightmares, often waking up screaming for my sisters or mother. Sarah would come to my room, sit on the edge of my bed, and speak softly until I calmed down. She never tried to touch me without permission, somehow understanding my need for space. Michael was equally patient, giving me time to adjust to having a father figure in my life. He never raised his voice, even when I tested boundaries by refusing to follow rules or having tantrums. School was another adjustment. I started mid-year at the local elementary school, feeling like an outsider. Years of instability had left gaps in my education, and I struggled to keep up. The Thompsons arranged for tutoring and met with my teachers regularly. Sarah would sit with me during homework, offering encouragement rather than criticism when I struggled. Slowly, my grades improved and I began to make friends. Therapy became an essential part of my healing journey. Twice a week, I met with Dr. Winters, a child psychologist specializing in trauma and adoption. Initially, I refused to speak during sessions, drawing pictures instead or playing with the toys in her office. Dr. Winters never pushed, allowing me to express myself in whatever way felt safe. Eventually, I began talking about my biological family, the feelings of abandonment, and my fear that the Thompsons would also leave me. Throughout this time, Sarah kept a memory box for me. It contained the few photos we had of my biological family, the broken butterfly clip from Tara, and a small diary where she encouraged me to write letters to my sisters and mother if I wanted to. She assured me that my past was important, and that it was okay to love my biological family while also building a new life with them. This permission to hold both realities simultaneously was profoundly healing. As months passed, I gradually lowered my defenses. I stopped flinching when Sarah brushed my hair and began accepting hugs from both of them. I started calling them by their first names instead of Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, though I still could not bring myself to use Mom and Dad. They never pressured me, assuring me that I could call them whatever felt comfortable. During this time, I still thought about my sisters frequently. The Thompsons tried to help me maintain contact, but circumstances made it difficult. Tara and Ashley had moved to another foster home in a different county, and their new foster parents were less cooperative about arranging visits. We managed a few phone calls, but they felt increasingly awkward and distant. My sisters sounded different, their lives continuing without me. Eventually, they were moved again, and despite the Thompsons' efforts, the trail went cold. Despite these lingering sorrows, I began to thrive in the stability of my new home. I joined the school choir, discovered a love for reading, and developed a close friendship with a girl named Megan, who lived down the street. The Thompsons celebrated my achievements no matter how small, attending every school concert and proudly displaying my artwork on the refrigerator. They took family photos with me included and hung them throughout the house, a visual affirmation that I belonged with them. The day I first called them Mom and Dad happened unexpectedly about a year after I moved in. We were having a picnic at a local park, and I had just won a game of frisbee against Michael. Laughing and breathless, I called out, "Dad, did you see that catch?" The word slipped out naturally, and I froze, unsure how he would react. Michael's eyes filled with tears, but he simply smiled and said, "I sure did, sweetheart. That was amazing." Later that evening, I called Sarah Mom as she tucked me in. She kissed my forehead and whispered, "I love you, Joanna." In that moment, something settled within me. I had found my home. The adoption was finalized when I was 10 years old. The judge asked if I understood what was happening and if this was what I wanted. With certainty I had rarely felt in my young life, I said yes. We celebrated with ice cream and a small party with my new extended family. The Thompsons gave me a necklace with a small heart pendant, symbolizing our new unbreakable bond. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt both sadness for the family I had lost and profound gratitude for the family I had found. It was the beginning of truly believing that I deserved love and stability. As I entered my teenage years, my identity began to take shape in ways both connected to and separate from my past. I excelled academically, discovering a particular aptitude for English and art. My adoptive parents nurtured these interests, enrolling me in creative writing workshops and art classes where I found joy in self-expression. When I won a regional essay contest at 14, my parents beamed with pride, and I realized I had internalized their belief in my potential. Questions about my biological family surfaced periodically, often triggered by school assignments about family heritage or medical forms that asked about family history. My parents always answered honestly, sharing what little information they had and offering to help me search for more if I wanted. During a particularly difficult period when I was 15, I became obsessed with finding my biological mother and sisters, convinced that reconnecting would fill the lingering emptiness I sometimes felt. My parents responded with compassion rather than defensiveness. They contacted our adoption agency and my former social worker, trying to obtain updated information. When these avenues proved fruitless, they helped me understand the limitations without dismissing my feelings. My mom sat with me one evening as I cried from frustration and loss, simply holding my hand and acknowledging the complexity of my emotions. "Your heart is big enough to hold love for all your family, past and present," she told me. "And your grief is valid too." High school brought new challenges and triumphs. Initially shy and reluctant to draw attention to myself, I gradually gained confidence through my involvement in the school newspaper and debate team. My history teacher, Mrs. Lawson, recognized my writing talent and encouraged me to apply for a prestigious summer journalism program. When I was accepted, it marked a turning point in how I viewed my capabilities. For the first time, I began to envision a future limited only by my ambition rather than by my past. I dated occasionally in high school, but kept most people at a comfortable distance. Trust did not come easily to me, and I feared rejection if others knew my full story. My close friend Alyssa knew about my adoption, but even she did not understand the complexity of my feelings about my biological family. I learned to compartmentalize, presenting a confident, achievement-oriented persona at school while processing my deeper emotions through journal writing and therapy sessions that continued monthly. College represented another fresh start. I chose State University 4 hours from home, majoring in marketing with a minor in psychology. Away from the familiarity of my hometown, I experimented with different versions of myself, joining the campus radio station and volunteering with a literacy program for underprivileged children. The latter work resonated deeply with me, triggering both painful memories and a sense of purpose in helping children facing challenges similar to my early ones. During my junior year, I met James in a marketing ethics class. Tall, with kind eyes and a thoughtful manner, he intrigued me with his intelligent questions and genuine interest in others' perspectives. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours over coffee, ranging from advertising controversies to favorite books. Unlike previous romantic interests, I did not feel the need to carefully edit my responses or present a curated version of myself. Something about his attentiveness made me feel safe. Our relationship progressed naturally, and within months, I found myself sharing parts of my past I had previously kept private. Sitting in his apartment one evening, surrounded by textbooks and takeout containers, I told him about my adoption and the fragments I remembered of my life before. I held my breath after finishing, waiting for his response, for any sign of pity or discomfort that would signal the beginning of the end. Instead, James took my hand and simply said, "Thank you for trusting me with your story. It helps me understand the amazing person you are even better." His response was neither dismissive nor overly dramatic, just a genuine acknowledgement that validated my experience without defining me by it. That night marked the first time I felt truly seen by someone outside my adoptive family. After graduation, I secured a position at a marketing firm in the city. The work was challenging and engaging, allowing me to apply my creativity and analytical skills to help clients build their brands. My supervisor, Natalie, quickly became a mentor, guiding my professional development and advocating for my promotion to junior account manager within my first year. Work provided a sense of control and accomplishment that balanced the emotional complexity of my personal life. James and I continued dating through these early career years, supporting each other's professional growth while deepening our connection. When we had been together for 3 years, we bought a small house in a neighborhood with tree-lined streets and a community garden. The process of creating our first home together felt significant, a tangible statement about building a future rather than dwelling in the past. Our wedding day 2 years later was both joyous and tinged with awareness of absence. As my father walked me down the aisle, I felt immense gratitude for the man who had chosen to be my dad, while also experiencing a momentary pang for the biological father I never knew. During the reception, as family members gave speeches and shared stories, I found myself wondering about Tara and Ashley, what they looked like now, whether they had married or had children of their own. These thoughts came and went like clouds passing across the sun, temporarily shadowing, but not diminishing the day's happiness. In quiet moments throughout these years, James and I discussed whether I should actively search for my biological family. Technology and social media had made such searches increasingly feasible, and I occasionally found myself typing my biological mother's name into search engines or scanning Facebook for profiles that might belong to my sisters. But each time I stopped short of taking concrete action. "What am I really looking for?" I asked James one evening. "Closure, connection. And what if they are still struggling with the same issues that led to our separation? Am I prepared for that reality?" James never pushed me one way or another, recognizing that this was a deeply personal decision. "Whatever you choose, I am with you," he assured me. "And if you decide to focus on the family we are building together, rather than looking backward, that is a valid choice too." His words gave me permission to prioritize my present happiness without guilt. And I was happy. Our circle of friends included couples from our respective workplaces, neighbors, and college connections who gathered for dinner parties and weekend hikes. My relationships with my adoptive parents remained strong with weekly phone calls and monthly visits. My career continued to advance with a promotion to senior account manager that brought new challenges and satisfaction. James and I began discussions about starting a family of our own, a prospect that filled me with both excitement and natural apprehension about my abilities as a mother given my complicated model. Throughout this period, I volunteered occasionally with foster care organizations, offering marketing expertise to help them recruit more foster families. This work felt meaningful, a way of giving back while maintaining appropriate boundaries around my own experience. I had created a life that honored my past without being constrained by it, finding purpose in my personal and professional connections rather than in a continuing search for what had been lost. I was 32 years old, and for the first time I felt completely at peace with who I was and the choices that had brought me to this point. Then the Facebook message arrived. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was at my desk reviewing a client presentation when my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. I rarely use the platform except to keep up with college friends and share occasional vacation photos, so the notification for a message from someone not in my friends list was unusual. When I opened it and saw the name Diane Carter, my heart stuttered in my chest. My biological mother had found me. "Joanna, I hope this is really you. I have been looking for you for so long. I have changed so much since you last saw me. I have been sober for 15 years now and have a stable job as a medical receptionist. Your sisters Tara and Ashley are both doing well too, and they are desperate to reconnect with you. We have never stopped thinking about you and hoping we would find you someday. Please respond if you get this. I understand if you are angry, but we are family and family should be together. Love, your mom." The message was accompanied by a photo of an older woman with graying blonde hair and the same green eyes I saw in my mirror every day. My hands began to shake so badly I had to put down my phone. Excusing myself from my desk, I hurried to the office bathroom where I locked myself in a stall and tried to control my breathing as panic washed over me in waves. 25 years of silence, and now she wanted to reconnect as if no time had passed, and she had signed it, "Your Mom," a title that in my mind belonged solely to Sarah Thompson, the woman who had raised me, dried my tears, and celebrated my achievements. Once I could breathe normally again, I called my adoptive mother. Hearing her familiar voice immediately grounded me as I explained the situation. "Oh, sweetheart," she said after a moment of silence. "What a shock this must be. What are you feeling right now?" It was a good question. What was I feeling? A chaotic mix of emotions churned within me. Curiosity about the women my sisters had become, anger at the years of absence, hope that perhaps there could be healing, fear that reconnecting would disrupt the life I had carefully built. "I do not know what to do, Mom," I admitted. "Part of me wants to know them, but another part is terrified of opening that door." "You do not have to decide anything right now," she assured me. "Take some time to process. Talk to your therapist. Discuss it with James. Your dad and I will support whatever you decide, but this has to be your choice, made for your well-being, not out of obligation." That evening, I showed the message to James. His immediate concern was for my emotional state rather than the content of the message. "How are you holding up?" he asked, sitting beside me on our couch and giving me space to process. "I feel ambushed," I admitted. "All these years of silence, and now she just appears expecting some kind of relationship. Where was she when I needed a mother? And why now? What does she want from me?" The questions poured out years of unresolved feelings bubbling to the surface. James listened attentively, then voiced his own concerns. "I worry about her timing and intentions," he said gently. "People usually reach out for a reason. Before you get too invested emotionally, it might be good to understand what she is really looking for. Is it just connection, or is there something else?" His caution resonated with a small, wary part of me that had learned early to anticipate disappointment. I decided to respond carefully, acknowledging receipt of her message and asking neutral questions about her life and my sisters, without committing to any meeting or deeper connection. I needed more information before I could determine if this potential relationship would be healthy or harmful. Diane's response came almost immediately, as if she had been waiting by her computer. She sent several photos of my sisters now in their mid-30s with their own families. Tara had 3 children and worked as a dental assistant. Ashley had 2 children and was a stay-at-home mom. They lived in neighboring towns about 2 hours from my city. She shared stories about how they had tried to find me over the years, claiming the foster care system had made it difficult by changing my last name and moving me out of county. I spent hours that night researching online, confirming some details about my biological family. Tara indeed worked at a dental office according to its website. Ashley had a public Facebook profile showing her children and husband. Diane's employment was harder to verify, but I found her listed as staff at a medical clinic. These confirmations provided some reassurance, though questions lingered about the narrative she had presented. As days passed, the messages became more frequent and emotionally charged. Diane described her journey to sobriety through a church program, her regrets about her parenting, and her dreams of having all her daughters together again. My sisters joined in sending their own messages full of childhood memories I had forgotten and expressions of how much they had missed their baby sister. The intensity and frequency of these communications began to trigger memories of my childhood trauma. I started having nightmares again, waking in a cold sweat with vague recollections of shouting and fear. After a particularly difficult night, I scheduled an appointment with my therapist, Dr. Marshall, whom I had continued seeing periodically into adulthood. Dr. Marshall helped me establish boundaries for this new communication. "You control the pace here," she reminded me. "A healthy relationship respects limits. Start with written communication only, and see how they respond to that boundary. Their reaction will tell you a lot about whether this relationship can be healthy." Following her advice, I wrote to Diane explaining that I needed time to process this reconnection. I stated clearly that I was only comfortable with messages for now and would let her know when or if I was ready for phone calls or in-person meetings. I explained that this was not rejection, but a necessary step for my emotional well-being. Initially, Diane and my sisters respected these boundaries. Their messages became less frequent and intense, focusing on sharing information rather than pushing for immediate reunion. This gave me space to reflect on what I wanted from this potential relationship. Could there be value in reconnecting with my biological roots? Might there be healing in confronting this part of my past? Or would it only reopen wounds better, left closed? As weeks passed, however subtle shifts occurred, Diane began mentioning how painful it was to be kept at a distance from her daughter. My sisters sent messages emphasizing family obligation and the importance of forgiveness. The emotional manipulation was subtle but unmistakable, creating a familiar pressure that echoed my childhood experiences. Despite my clearly stated boundaries, they began asking when we could meet, suggesting dates and locations, creating a sense of expectation I had not agreed to. After 3 months of this careful dance, I found myself reconsidering an in-person meeting, partly from curiosity and partly from a desire to resolve the tension. Perhaps seeing them face to face would provide the closure I had never received. Or maybe, as they suggested, there could be healing and reconnection. With trepidation and against James's gentle concerns, I agreed to meet them at a restaurant halfway between our cities, a neutral location where we could talk. The anticipation of this meeting sent me back to therapy for preparation. Dr. Marshall helped me develop coping strategies for potential triggers and establish clear internal boundaries about what I was and was not willing to discuss. James agreed to wait nearby in case I needed support, a compromise, after he expressed worry about me facing this emotional minefield alone. With these safeguards in place, I steeled myself for the reunion that would either heal old wounds or create new ones. I arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes early, wanting time to collect myself before they arrived. I chose a table near the back where we would have some privacy, but still be in a public space. The waiting felt interminable, my hands fidgeting with the napkin as I rehearsed opening lines in my head. What do you say to the family that was both yours and not yours? People who shared your blood but were essentially strangers. When they walked in, the shock of recognition hit me physically. Despite the years and changes, I knew them instantly. Diane. My biological mother had aged considerably, her once blonde hair now streaked with gray lines around her eyes and mouth, telling of hardship. but those eyes, the same shape and color as mine, locked onto me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Behind her came Tara and Ashley, both heavier and more careworn than the girls in my memories, but with familiar mannerisms that triggered a cascade of childhood recollections. They spotted me and paused briefly before approaching. There was a moment of awkward hesitation before Diane stepped forward and embraced me. I remained stiff in her arms, unprepared for the flood of conflicting emotions her touch evoked. The scent of her perfume, different from what I remembered but somehow still triggering, brought a lump to my throat. Tara and Ashley hugged me next, their embraces equally disconcerting, a strange blend of familiarity and foreignness. "You look so beautiful," Diane said as we all sat down, her eyes scanning my face. "You have my eyes, but your father's smile." It was the first mention of my biological father, a ghost in my history who had never had substance. The initial conversation was polite but strained, focusing on safe topics like my marketing career and their jobs. Tara showed photos of her children, 3 boys, aged 12, 9, and 6. Ashley had 2 girls, 14 and 10. I smiled at the images of these nieces and nephews I had never known existed, trying to process that these children were related to me, that in some alternate version of my life, I might have been a present aunt at their births and birthdays. The first sign that the meeting might not fulfill my hopes for closure came when Diane made a comment about the restaurant. "This place is fancy," she said, glancing around at the modest bistro I had chosen for its neutral atmosphere and reasonable prices. "You must be doing well for yourself." "I am comfortable," I replied carefully. "My company provides a good salary, and James and I are careful with our finances." I did not mention that we had recently been approved for a mortgage on a larger home, sensing somehow that this information would be better kept private. The conversation shifted as Diane began describing how difficult their lives had been after I was taken away, as she phrased it. According to her narrative, the family had been unjustly separated, and she had fought valiantly to regain custody, but been thwarted by an uncaring system. Tara and Ashley nodded along occasionally, adding details about foster homes they had endured and the pain of losing their sister. "We had it so hard," Tara said, her voice tinged with resentment. "While you got adopted by a nice family in the suburbs, we bounced between foster homes until we aged out of the system." I felt a stab of guilt, the old feeling that I had somehow betrayed them by finding stability when they had not. Dr. Marshall and I had worked extensively on this guilt, recognizing it as misplaced, but in that moment, it resurged powerfully. "I am sorry your experience was difficult," I said carefully. "I had challenges too, adjusting to a new family and dealing with the trauma of separation." "But you had it easy," Ashley interjected. "You had 2 parents who wanted you a nice house, probably went to college without loans. We had to scrape for everything." I tried to redirect the conversation to more positive territory, asking about their children and current lives, but the undercurrent of resentment persisted. Diane mentioned struggles with her landlord, medical bills she couldn't pay, and her aging car that needed expensive repairs. Each story seemed designed to emphasize hardship, creating an uncomfortable contrast with my own more comfortable circumstances. Then came the moment that clarified everything. Diane reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes filling with tears. "Joanna, I have dreamed of this day for so long, having all my girls together again, becoming a real family. That is all I have ever wanted." The emotion seemed genuine, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps there could be some kind of relationship here, some healing of old wounds. Then she continued. "And now that we have found you, we were hoping you might be able to help us out. Just temporarily, of course. We are being evicted from our apartment next month, and we need a place to stay for just a few weeks until we can find something affordable. We have already started looking at places in your city since we wanted to be closer to you anyway." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They had already moved to my city, before even meeting me or knowing if I wanted a relationship, and they expected to stay in my home. The presumption was staggering. "I actually moved here last week," Diane clarified, seeing my expression. "I am staying with a friend, but it is very cramped and I cannot impose much longer. Tara and Ashley are planning to join me once we find a place so their families can have a fresh start too." I excused myself to the bathroom, legs unsteady as I processed what was happening. In the privacy of the stall, I called James, who had been waiting at a coffee shop nearby. "They want to move in with us," I whispered, my voice shaking. "They have already relocated here expecting me to house them. This was never about reconnecting. It was about finding someone to solve their problems." James's concern was immediate. "Do not commit to anything," he advised. "Tell them you need to think about it, and we will figure out a response together." Remember what Dr. Marshall said about boundaries. When I returned to the table, I found Diane and my sisters discussing which room would be best for Diane in our house and whether the girls could share the guest room when they visited with their children. The presumption left me momentarily speechless. They had not only assumed my answer would be yes, but were already planning the logistics of moving into my home. Gathering my composure, I spoke carefully. "I understand you are going through a difficult time, and I sympathize with that. However, having you stay with us is not something I can offer. James and I value our privacy, and our home is not set up to accommodate additional people." I paused, then added, "I would be happy to help you find resources for housing assistance or temporary accommodations if that would be helpful." The change in atmosphere was immediate and chilling. Diane's tearful gratitude vanished, replaced by cold anger. "So that is how it is," she said, her voice hard. "Now that you have your perfect life, you cannot be bothered to help your real family. Do you know what I went through to find you? Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep missing my baby girl? And this is how you repay that love?" "Mom, calm down," Tara said, though her own expression had hardened as well. "Maybe Joanna just needs time to think about it. She only just met us again." "No, she made herself clear," Diane continued, her voice rising. "She is ashamed of us. Probably thinks we will embarrass her in front of her fancy friends and coworkers. Well, let me tell you something, Joanna. Blood is thicker than water. When everyone else abandons you, family is all you have. But I guess you forgot that lesson while you were busy playing house with your adopted parents." Other diners were beginning to stare as Diane's voice grew louder. Ashley attempted to defuse the situation, suggesting they all take some time to cool off and discuss this later. But Diane was beyond reason, years of resentment and expectations spilling out in a public tirade. "You owe us," she hissed across the table. "After everything we lost because the system took you away, you owe us at least this much. But you are just like your father, selfish to the core." That comparison to a man I had never known, but who had abandoned his family before I was even born, broke something in me. I stood up, gathering my purse and jacket. "I am sorry you feel that way," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I think it is best if I leave now. This is not productive for any of us." As I walked away, Diane called after me loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "Go ahead, abandon your family again. That is what you do best, is not it? Running away when things get tough." I made it to the parking lot before the tears came hot and fast down my cheeks. James found me there, leaning against my car, struggling to breathe through the sobs. He held me without speaking, a solid presence as the full weight of what had just happened settled over me. My biological family had not sought me out for reconciliation or even to know me as a person. They had sought me out as a resource, a solution to their problems. The rejection felt even more profound than the original abandonment of my childhood. "Let us go home," James said gently when my tears subsided. "We will figure this out together." As we drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw Diane and my sisters exiting the restaurant, Diane gesturing angrily as she spoke. A profound sadness replaced my shock and anger. Whatever fantasies I had entertained about healing and connection had been shattered in a single afternoon. The door to that possible future had closed before it had truly opened. The fallout from the restaurant confrontation began almost immediately. By the time I arrived home, my phone was flooded with messages from Diane, alternating between anger and tearful apologies. "I am sorry I lost my temper," one read, "but you have to understand how much it hurt to be rejected by my own daughter." Another, sent minutes later, accused, "You think you are too good for us now? We are an embarrassment to your perfect life." My sisters joined in with their own messages. Tara wrote, "Mom is devastated. She really needed your help and you just walked away. Is your big house really more important than family?" Ashley sent photos of her daughters with the caption, "Don't you want to know your nieces? They've been asking about their Aunt Joanna?" I showed the messages to James, who suggested I block them on Facebook. "You set a reasonable boundary and they responded with manipulation," he pointed out. "You do not owe them access to your life." Reluctantly, I followed his advice, blocking all three of them, hoping this would give me space to process the encounter without constant emotional barrages. The relief was short-lived. Within days, I began receiving texts from unknown numbers, clearly from Diane using friends' phones or new accounts. The messages grew increasingly desperate and accusatory. "You can't just erase us from your life," one read. "We are your real family whether you like it or not." The situation escalated when Diane showed up at my workplace one afternoon. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked and whispered that a woman claiming to be my mother was causing a scene in reception, demanding to see me. Ice filled my veins as I excused myself from the meeting. In the lobby, I found Diane engaged in a heated argument with our security guard, who was attempting to explain that she could not enter without an appointment or employee escort. "There she is," Diane exclaimed when she saw me. "Tell them who I am, Joanna. Tell them I am your mother." The eyes of my colleagues and receptionist turned to me, curiosity evident in their expressions. Mortification washed over me as I approached. "Diane, this is not appropriate," I said quietly. "I am at work. You cannot just show up here." "You won't answer my calls or messages," she countered loudly. "You gave me no choice. All I want is to talk to my daughter." The security guard looked to me questioningly. "She's your mother, Ms. Thompson." "Biologically, yes," I admitted, conscious of the audience gathering. "But we are not in contact. I would appreciate if you would escort her out." "You're having me thrown out!" Diane's voice rose to a near shriek. "After all these years of searching for you, this is how you treat me, by having security remove me like some kind of criminal." As the guard gently but firmly led her toward the exit, Diane called out, "Your sisters were right about you. You are heartless. You have forgotten where you came from." I returned to my office, closed the door, and sat at my desk, hands trembling so badly I could barely dial James's number. The public humiliation was excruciating, but worse was the realization that this might be just the beginning. If Diane had found my workplace, what would stop her from coming to our home? The incident at my office marked the beginning of a period of escalating harassment. Messages continued from new numbers faster than I could block them. Diane's tone grew increasingly desperate and threatening. "If you think you can just pretend we don't exist, you're wrong," she wrote. "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of daughter you really are." The stress began to take a serious toll on my mental health. I developed insomnia, lying awake at night imagining Diane appearing at our home or causing another scene at my workplace. Anxiety attacks became frequent, triggered by unexpected phone calls or knocks at the door. James watched with growing concern as I became withdrawn and jumpy, a shadow of my usual confident self. "This is affecting you too much," he observed one evening, finding me checking the locks on our doors and windows for the third time. "I think we need to take more decisive action." We scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Marshall, who helped me recognize the patterns of manipulation and emotional abuse in Diane's behavior. "What you're experiencing is a form of harassment," she explained. "Her behavior is not about love or family connection. It's about control and getting what she wants from you. You have every right to protect yourself." At her suggestion, I began documenting every contact attempt, saving messages, and noting dates and times of calls or appearances. She also recommended we consult an attorney about legal options for stopping the harassment. During this period, I discovered through a mutual acquaintance that Diane had been telling extended family members a distorted version of our reunion. According to her narrative, I had cruelly rejected her sincere attempts to reconcile, flaunting my wealth while refusing to help my struggling family. Distant relatives I had never met began sending me messages on social media, chastising me for my callousness and urging me to do right by your mother. The final blow came when I learned that Diane's claims of 15 years of sobriety had been greatly exaggerated. My attorney's investigator discovered she had multiple DUI arrests within the past decade and had been fired from 2 medical offices for suspected prescription theft. Her pattern of reconnecting with estranged family members or old friends when in financial need was well established, leaving a trail of broken relationships and resentment. This information, while painful, solidified my resolve. With my attorney's guidance, I drafted a cease and desist letter formally requesting that Diane and my sisters stop all contact attempts. The letter stated clearly that further harassment would result in legal action, potentially including a restraining order. My adoptive parents provided unwavering support throughout this ordeal. "You gave them a chance, which was more than they deserved given how they abandoned you," my father said during a Sunday visit. "You have nothing to feel guilty about." My mother, ever insightful, added, "Sometimes the hardest choices are between what we wish could be true and what is actually true. You wished for a loving reconciliation, but that's not what they're offering. Accepting that reality isn't failure, it's wisdom." After much reflection and consultation with both my therapist and attorney, I made the difficult decision to completely cut contact. I wrote a final email explaining my decision in clear, unemotional terms. I acknowledged our shared history, but stated firmly that their behavior had demonstrated an inability to respect my boundaries or engage in a healthy relationship. I wished them well, but made it clear that I would pursue legal protection if they continued to contact me. The response was swift and vicious. Diane and my sisters created social media posts about me using my full name and workplace, claiming I had abandoned my real family and was ashamed of where I came from. They shared childhood photos of me they had somehow obtained, creating a narrative that painted me as an ungrateful daughter who had forgotten her roots once she achieved success. The culmination came when Diane and my sisters appeared unannounced at our home one Sunday afternoon. James and I were in the backyard when the doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by loud knocking. Through the front window, I saw all three of them standing on our porch, Diane peering through the glass and calling my name. We did not answer, instead calling the police to report trespassers who refused to leave our property. As we waited huddled in our kitchen with the blinds drawn, I heard Diane shouting that she would return, that she would not give up on her daughter, that eventually I would have to face my real family. When the police arrived, they spoke with Diane and my sisters at length before they finally left. The officer who came to our door afterward explained they had been warned not to return, but suggested we follow through with the restraining order given the pattern of harassment. "People like this often don't stop until there are legal consequences," he advised. That night, as James held me while I cried, I mourned not just for the family relationship I had hoped might be possible, but for the fantasy I had carried since childhood, that somewhere my biological mother and sisters had loved and missed me as much as I had them. The reality that they saw me as a resource rather than a person to love was a wound deeper than the original abandonment. It required a different kind of healing, one that began with accepting the painful truth and protecting myself from further harm. The process of obtaining a restraining order was both emotionally draining and empowering. Sitting in the courthouse detailing the harassment to a sympathetic judge, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. The judge granted a temporary order immediately, with a hearing scheduled for the permanent order 2 weeks later. When the court officer handed me the official document, something shifted within me. This paper represented my right to peace, my value as a person deserving of respect and safety. It was a tangible rejection of the guilt and obligation that had haunted me since childhood. In the days that followed, I experienced waves of doubt and second-guessing. Had I been too harsh? Should I have tried harder to establish a relationship with boundaries? Was I abandoning them just as I had felt abandoned as a child? I expressed these concerns during an emergency therapy session with Dr. Marshall. "Joanna," she said gently, "there's an important distinction here. You are not rejecting them as people or denying your connection. You are refusing to participate in an unhealthy dynamic that was causing you harm. That's not abandonment, it's self-protection." She helped me recognize that my biological family's behavior followed classic patterns of manipulation. They alternated between love bombing and guilt tripping with no respect for your clearly stated boundaries. When kindness didn't get them what they wanted, they resorted to threats and public humiliation. These are not the actions of people seeking a genuine relationship. My adoptive parents reinforced this perspective when I called them voice-shaking after filing the restraining order. Sweetheart family is not about DNA. my mother said firmly. It's about who shows up consistently with love and respect. You gave them a chance to be that kind of family, and they chose a different path. My father, typically more reserved with his emotions, spoke with unusual intensity. I'm proud of you for protecting yourself, Joanna. It takes courage to walk away from something you've wanted for so long when you realize it's not what you thought it would be. James proved to be my rock throughout this ordeal. He never said, "I told you so," despite having voiced concerns about their intentions from the beginning. Instead, he focused on helping me rebuild my sense of security. He installed additional locks and a security system at our home. He accompanied me to and from work for several weeks until my anxiety about running into Diane subsided. Most importantly, he created space for me to process my grief without judgment, holding me through tearful nights and listening as I worked through conflicting emotions. I realized through this experience how fortunate I was in the family I had chosen and who had chosen me. Friends rallied around as well, offering support and distraction when needed. My colleague Natalie, who had witnessed the scene at our office, checked in regularly and helped deflect curious questions from other coworkers. Our neighbors, alerted to the situation, kept watchful eyes for unfamiliar vehicles on our street. Gradually, I began to reclaim the peace and stability I had worked so hard to build. I returned to regular exercise, finding that physical activity helped dispel the lingering anxiety. I reconnected with friends I had withdrawn from during the height of the harassment. James and I resumed our weekend hikes and dinner parties, activities I had avoided, while fearing unexpected appearances from my biological family. The hearing for the permanent restraining order became a turning point. Diane appeared with a court-appointed attorney, attempting to paint herself as a misunderstood mother seeking reconciliation with her long-lost daughter. But the evidence was irrefutable, the pattern of escalation clear in the documented messages, workplace incident, and unannounced home visit. When the judge granted the permanent order prohibiting contact for 2 years, I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders. Outside the courthouse, James squeezed my hand. "How are you feeling?" he asked, scanning my face for signs of distress. "Lighter," I replied truthfully. "Like I can breathe fully again." In the months that followed, I channeled my experience into something meaningful. I increased my volunteer work with foster care organizations, offering both marketing expertise and personal perspective. I began mentoring a teenage girl in foster care, providing the kind of stable adult presence I had benefited from. These activities helped transform my pain into purpose, creating meaning from the difficult lessons I had learned. I also strengthened my boundaries in other relationships, recognizing patterns I had previously tolerated out of a deep-seated fear of rejection. I declined projects that required unhealthy sacrifices of my time and well-being. I expressed my needs more clearly to friends and colleagues. Each small act of self-advocacy built upon the last, creating a foundation of self-respect that had previously been fragile. James and I resumed our discussions about starting a family, this time with greater clarity about the kind of parents we wanted to be. "I know what not to do," I told him one evening as we sat on our back porch watching fireflies emerge in the twilight. "And more importantly, I know what to do thanks to Michael and Sarah. I want to create the same kind of safety and unconditional love they gave me." He took my hand, his expression serious. "You already know how to love like that, Joanna. I see it every day in how you care for the people in your life, how you show up consistently and respect their boundaries. You'll be an amazing mother." His confidence in me helped dissolve the lingering fear that I might somehow carry forward the dysfunctional patterns of my biological family. I began to truly understand that family is created through consistent love and respect, not merely through genetic connection. The family I had built with James, my adoptive parents, and chosen friends was real and substantial in ways my biological connections had never been. 6 months after the restraining order was granted, I received a letter from Ashley forwarded through my attorney as required by the court order. Unlike previous communications, this one was reflective and apologetic. She acknowledged the manipulation and explained that she had begun therapy herself, recognizing unhealthy patterns in her relationships. She did not ask for contact or forgiveness, simply expressing hope that I was well, and that perhaps someday when she had done more healing work, we might consider a healthier connection. I appreciated her respect for the boundaries I had established, but I also recognized that I was not ready to open that door even a crack. I had found peace in the clean break and the clarity of my chosen family. Perhaps someday that might change, but for now, my focus remained on nurturing the relationships that brought joy and stability to my life. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that closing the door on my biological family had not diminished me, but had actually allowed me to fully embrace the family I had created. The fantasy of reconciliation had kept me tethered to the past, to the wounded child who longed for her mother's love. Letting go of that fantasy freed me to be fully present in the life I had built, to appreciate the love that surrounded me without the shadow of what might have been. Blood does not define family. Actions do. Respect does. Love expressed consistently over time does. Sometimes the bravest, most loving choice we can make is to walk away from those who cannot treat us with the dignity we deserve, even when those people share our DNA. In choosing myself and my chosen family, I found not only peace, but a profound sense of coming home to myself. I hope my story resonates with those of you who have faced similar choices. How do you define family in your own life? Is it through blood connection or through the quality of relationships? Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to close a door to protect your peace? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone in these complex family journeys. Thank you for listening, and remember that you deserve relationships that honor your worth always.